The grand dining hall of Thorne Mansion shimmered with the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, its opulent setting now frozen in a tableau of stunned silence. Elite guests, dressed in their finest, sat rigid at the polished mahogany table, their forks hovering mid-air. All eyes were fixed on the center of the room, where Vivienne Thorne, the formidable matriarch, stood before Amara. Vivienne's elegant facade had crumbled, revealing a raw, seething fury in her eyes. With a sudden, violent motion, she seized the pristine white fabric of Amara's Maid uniform. The sound of tearing linen ripped through the hushed air, shockingly loud, exposing the delicate skin beneath. Amara stood utterly still, her wide, unblinking eyes reflecting the collective horror and her own profound humiliation. A single, choked gasp escaped from the assembled guests. From his seat, Ethan Thorne watched, his jaw clenching, a dangerous spark igniting deep within his usually calm gaze. Yet, this public act of degradation was not a sudden burst of temper, but the culmination of a simmering resentment. Amara, a young woman of quiet grace, had always moved through the Thorne Mansion with an inherent dignity that belied her station. She was diligent, patient, and carried herself with an unspoken strength that many of the privileged could only envy. Ethan Thorne, Vivienne's heir, had observed this for years. He saw her elegant posture even when performing menial tasks, her resilience in the face of casual disregard, and a beauty that was far more profound than any superficial adornment. His admiration for her had grown steadily, a forbidden seed taking root in the rigid soil of their society, unnoticed by all but the most watchful eyes. Those watchful eyes belonged, of course, to Vivienne Thorne. Obsessed with control and appearances, she began to notice the subtle shift in Ethan's demeanor whenever Amara was near. A flicker of softness, a lingering glance, a polite word that felt too warm for a servant. Her irritation, initially a minor annoyance, curdled into suspicion and then disdain. Vivienne's sharp tongue, usually reserved for social rivals, found new targets. "Don't walk so loudly in the halls, Amara," she would remark, her voice like cut glass. Or she would interrupt Ethan's polite inquiries to the maid, reminding Amara, and indeed everyone, of her place. The subtle barbs soon became more overt. One sunlit afternoon on the mansion terrace, as Amara served tea, Vivienne's close friend, Beatrice Finch, commented idly, "She's rather pretty for a maid, Vivienne." Amara, ever the picture of composure, felt a subtle flinch deep within her. Vivienne's response was swift and chillingly dismissive. "She's ordinary, Beatrice, and she will never be more than help in this house." Vivienne offered a cold, satisfied smile. Amara, though her hands remained steady pouring the Earl Grey, felt the words land like a physical blow, a stark reminder of the invisible, yet impenetrable, wall between them. Later that evening, as Amara walked through a hushed corridor, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Ethan. His eyes, usually guarded, held a raw earnestness. He stopped her gently. "You don't have to take her words, Amara," he said, his voice low, filled with a quiet intensity. Amara, still guarded, merely shook her head. "It's my work, sir, to serve and to endure." Ethan stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "No, your work is to live with dignity. You shouldn't have to endure such cruelty." He paused, then his voice dropped to a near whisper, a solemn promise. "One day, Amara, I'll show you that you're worth far more than any title, more than any social station. You are worth everything." A spark of hope, fragile yet persistent, ignited within Amara's heart. A silent connection forged between them, just as the mansion prepared for the grandest dinner of the season, a night destined for another, far more public, confrontation. The Thorne Mansion, usually a bastion of hushed elegance, now buzzed with a frenetic energy. Preparations for the grand dinner were in full swing. A symphony of clattering silver from the kitchen, the rhythmic thud of laundry being pressed, and the hurried footsteps of servants in the corridors. Yet beneath the surface of this organized chaos, a palpable current of unease rippled through the staff. Naya, her brow furrowed with worry, found Amara meticulously polishing a silver platter, her movements precise and unhurried. "She's planning something, Amara," Naya whispered, her voice low and urgent. Be careful tonight." Amara's focused hands never faltered, but her eyes, though calm, held a flicker of apprehension. "We'll do our work," she replied softly, her voice a quiet anchor in the brewing storm. "That's all." Later that evening, as twilight cast long shadows across the opulent drawing room, Vivienne Thorne summoned Amara. The room, usually warm with the glow of a crackling fire, felt formal and cold, illuminated by the dim light of a single, distant lamp. Vivienne, without preamble, fixed Amara with an unblinking stare, her voice a low, chilling murmur. "This is not your home, Amara. You are not family, and you will never, ever think of my son as anything more than your master." Amara stood composed, her hands clasped, but an inward tremor ran through her. Vivienne leaned forward, her words like daggers. "If you forget your place, if you believe for a moment that his kindness grants you access to what is not yours, I will remind you, and I will do so in front of everyone." The threat hung heavy in the air, cold and utterly menacing, leaving no doubt of Vivienne's intent. The night of the grand dinner arrived, and the Thorne Mansion truly lived up to its name, aglow with 1,000 lights. Chandeliers sparkled, reflecting off polished floors, and the air hummed with the hushed elegance of anticipation. Servants bustled, their faces a mixture of excitement and strain as the final touches were applied. Amara moved through her duties, a picture of outward calm, her movements as graceful as ever. Yet, beneath that composed exterior, her heart beat with a quiet anxiety. Vivienne's chilling words echoed in her mind, a constant, low thrum of dread. Nia, catching Amara's eye as she passed, offered a soft, reassuring whisper. "Steady hands, Amara. We just have to survive tonight." Amara merely nodded, her internal monologue a quiet mantra. "Just do your work. Nothing more." Soon, the grand entrance hall, filled with a flurry of silk dresses, glittering jewels, and polite, often forced, greetings. Wealthy and influential guests streamed in, their laughter and chatter creating a vibrant, yet subtly scrutinizing social buzz. Amara, assisting with coats, caught Ethan Thorne's eye across the bustling hall. He offered her a small, almost imperceptible nod of reassurance, a silent promise of support in the face of the gathering storm. Nearby, Vivienne Thorne, ever the impeccable hostess, leaned conspiratorially towards Beatrice Finch. Their whispers were low, but Amara, with her heightened senses, could almost feel the weight of their words, hinting at their awareness and Vivienne's clear intent for the evening's unfolding drama. The grand dining room, a spectacle of crystal and candlelight, soon filled with the polite clinking of silverware and the murmur of conversation as dinner commenced. Amara served, her movements fluid and elegant, a silent shadow amidst the opulence. But as she moved, she became acutely aware of the curious glances, the hushed whispers from various society ladies. "Such a pretty girl to be only a maid," one murmured, her gaze lingering a moment too long. Beatrice Finch, seated near Vivienne, added a veiled warning, her voice dripping with insinuation. "Pretty things in uniforms can be dangerous, my dear, if they forget their place." Vivienne, observing Ethan's continued respectful attention to Amara, saw his eyes soften just a fraction as Amara placed a dish before him. Her own eyes hardened, her grip on her wine glass tightening almost imperceptibly. The air around her grew colder, thick with a palpable, silent fury. As the second course was presented, a sudden, almost imperceptible shift occurred at the head of the table. Vivienne Thorne's composure, stretched thin by Ethan's repeated, respectful thanks to Amara and the undeniable softening in his gaze, finally snapped. A cold fury, sharp and decisive, settled over her features. The clatter of cutlery, the polite chatter, all seemed to fade for her. She leaned towards Beatrice, her voice a low, chilling whisper, barely audible above the general din. "Watch this, Beatrice." A subtle, cruel smile touched her lips, a predator's grin just before the strike. The air crackled with a sudden, extreme tension, the calm before the devastating storm. The grand dining room, usually a bastion of refined conversation and hushed elegance, became a stage for a raw, visceral drama. Amara, moving with her customary grace, presented a delicate dessert to a guest when Vivienne Thorne's voice, sharp and laced with venom, sliced through the air. "Stop! You are nothing but a maid. You forget your place." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled elite as Vivienne rose, her eyes burning with an almost feral intensity. Before Amara could even fully turn, Vivienne's hand shot out, seizing the pristine fabric of Amara's uniform. With a brutal, deliberate tug, the crisp white material tore, a sound like a muted shriek in the sudden, profound silence. The tear ran from Amara's shoulder down her back, exposing a shocking sliver of her skin, a vulnerable canvas beneath the opulence of the room. Amara froze, her dessert tray tilting precariously as her wide, unblinking eyes met the horrified, then quickly averted, gazes of the guests. Vivienne Thorne stood over her, a sneer of triumphant cruelty twisting her lips, her point made with savage finality. Amara, exposed and profoundly humiliated, felt the world spin. Ethan Thorne, across the table, watched, a silent, simmering fury igniting in his eyes. The air thickened, suffocating the last vestiges of polite society. No one moved, no one spoke, as Amara stood, a living statue of public shame. Then, a chair scraped back with a violent screech, echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Ethan Thorne rose from his seat, his towering presence commanding immediate attention. His eyes, usually a calm blue, blazed with a righteous, incandescent fury that silenced even Vivienne's triumphant smirk. He strode purposefully around the table, his gaze fixed on Amara. Without a word, he reached her, his movements swift and decisive. He shrugged off his own finely tailored dinner jacket, the dark fabric a stark contrast to the white uniform, and gently, but firmly, draped it over Amara's shoulders, shielding her torn clothing and exposed skin from the prying, shocked eyes. Amara, her own eyes brimming, looked up at him, a silent plea for understanding, a fragile gratitude. Ethan then turned, his posture rigid, his gaze locking onto his mother, Vivienne. "Mother," he stated, his voice low but vibrating with an undeniable power that cut through the silence. That was enough. More than enough. His words were not a question, but a definitive, chilling declaration, a line drawn in the opulent sand. Vivienne recoiled slightly, her face a mask of disbelief, her cruelty momentarily eclipsed by shock at her son's open defiance. The silence that followed Ethan's declaration was deafening, broken only by the frantic beat of Amara's heart beneath the protective weight of his jacket. Ethan did not waver, his gaze still fixed on his mother, who now struggled to compose herself, her face contorting between shock and mounting rage. "You humiliated her, not because she forgot her place," Ethan continued, his voice gaining in strength and conviction, "but because you despised her presence. You went too far, mother, far beyond any acceptable social boundary." His words hung in the air, a scathing, articulate indictment that stripped away all pretense. The guests shifted uneasily, a murmur of discomfort rippling through them. "Tonight," Ethan finished, his voice resonating with an undeniable moral authority, "you've shown everyone here, and perhaps even yourself, that cruelty, not class, rules your table, but it will not rule mine." Amara, hidden beneath Ethan's jacket, felt the tears she had so stoically held back finally fall, hot and silent. They were tears not of shame, but of profound, unexpected relief, a validation of her quiet dignity in the face of such public malice. Vivienne Thorne, stripped bare of her social authority, could only stare, her face pale with a dawning realization of her own undoing. The grand dining room, once a scene of festive opulence, now felt like a mausoleum. The festive atmosphere had completely evaporated, replaced by a thick, uncomfortable silence. Guests exchanged uneasy, embarrassed glances, unsure how to react to the raw family drama that had just unfolded before them. Beatrice Finch, ever the society survivor, attempted a weak, forced pleasantry, a desperate effort to salvage the shattered evening. "Well, what a passionate house! Perhaps we should enjoy dessert, despite the drama." But her words fell flat, dissolving into the heavy air. The dinner, it was clear, was irrecoverably ruined. Plates remained untouched, wineglasses half full. Amara, still shielded by Ethan's jacket, continued to weep quietly. The tears, a release of pent-up emotion, a washing away of the humiliation. Guests slowly began to rise, avoiding eye contact, their polite smiles replaced by expressions of discomfort and judgment directed not at Amara, but at their hostess. Vivienne Thorne remained rigid in her seat, a statue of wounded pride and simmering fury. As the guests, one by one, began to discreetly make their excuses and depart, a small, intimate space opened around Amara and Ethan. Amara, her voice barely a whisper, turned to Ethan. "Thank you, sir," she murmured, the words heavy with a gratitude she could barely contain. Ethan gently placed a hand on her arm, his gaze earnest and unwavering. "You don't need to thank me for being treated as human, Amara," he responded firmly, his voice filled with a quiet conviction. "That is your right." His words were a balm, a profound affirmation of her inherent worth, separate from her station. They prompted a deeper, more profound release of tears for Amara. These were not tears of pain or humiliation, but of dignity validated, of a spirit finally seen and respected. In that moment, amidst the chaos of the departing guests, a quiet understanding settled between them, a bond forged in defiance and mutual respect. The grand Thorne Mansion, once bustling with the echoes of high society, fell into a heavy, unnatural silence as the last guest departed early. The polished corridors stretched eerily quiet, the grand hall vast and empty. In the staff quarters, Nia found Amara, still wearing Ethan's jacket, sitting quietly. Nia offered a comforting hand, her eyes full of admiration. "You stood tall, Amara," she whispered, a fierce pride in her voice. Amara leaned into her friend, a small, weary smile touching her lips. "I only stood because he did," she replied softly, acknowledging the profound impact of Ethan's courage. Meanwhile, Vivienne Thorne remained alone in the cavernous dining hall, the remnants of her ruined dinner scattered around her. Her pride, usually an impenetrable shield, lay shattered, her public disgrace a bitter pill. For Amara, however, a profound internal shift had begun. The quiet strength she'd always possessed now had a new purpose, a new direction, a quiet resolve born from the night's crucible. The grand dining hall, now silent and empty, still echoed in Amara's mind. Hours after the guests had fled, a profound weariness settled upon her, too heavy for sleep. In the quiet solitude of the servants' quarters, a single lamp cast long shadows, illuminating the rich fabric of Ethan's jacket in her lap. Her fingers traced the elegant stitching, a tangible reminder of the night's shocking events. Nia, ever the quiet observer, found her there. She sat beside Amara, a comforting presence. "You know what you showed last night?" Nia whispered, her voice soft but firm. "That you are stronger than all of us put together." Amara offered a faint, tired smile, her eyes distant, already processing the profound and irreversible shift in her quiet life. The first light of dawn filtered into the Thorne Mansion kitchen, carrying with it the comforting aroma of fresh bread, a stark contrast to the emotional intensity that still lingered from the previous night. Amara, already at work, felt a shadow fall over her. It was Ethan. His presence filled the space, his gaze earnest, almost pleading. He offered a heartfelt apology for his mother's deplorable actions, his voice raw with sincerity. "I'm truly sorry for what happened last night, Amara," he began, stepping closer. "I won't let her treat you like that again. She already thinks that I care for you. And she's right, Amara. She's absolutely right. I love you." The words hung in the air, a bold, defiant declaration. Amara's hands trembled, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and a profound, overwhelming emotion she dared not yet name. News of Ethan's public defiance reached Vivienne swiftly, fueling a rage that simmered beneath her perfectly composed exterior, until it erupted in the grand sitting room. Her voice, usually a weapon of subtle condescension, now cracked with open fury. "Have you lost your mind, Ethan?" she shrieked, pacing before him. "To defend a servant, a mere maid, over your own mother? She is nothing, Ethan, nothing but a maid." Ethan, however, stood his ground, his posture unyielding, his eyes fixed on his mother with an unwavering conviction. "She is not nothing," he retorted, his voice calm but imbued with steel. "She has more dignity in her silence than you possess in all your titles. Your cruelty made her stand taller than you ever could, mother." The opulent room crackled with the raw, undeniable tension of their ideological clash. The Thorne Mansion scandal, a tale of a defiant son and a publicly shamed matriarch, spread like wildfire through the city's elite circles. Whispers followed Vivienne wherever she went, her reputation suffering a blow from which it might never fully recover. Yet, from the ashes of her humiliation, Amara emerged, not as a victim, but as a symbol. Young Thorne has a noble heart. Society matrons murmured over their tea, maybe too noble for his mother's liking. Within the mansion's staff quarters, a new respect for Amara blossomed. Naya would catch the subtle, admiring glances from other maids, the quiet nods of solidarity. Amara, though still preferring anonymity, found herself unexpectedly renowned, a quiet strength blooming where only quiet endurance had been. The weight of unwanted attention pressed heavily on Amara. Alone in her small, humble room that night, illuminated only by a single flickering candle, she sought solace. Kneeling by her simple bed, hands clasped, she offered a quiet prayer, her heart heavy with a turmoil she rarely showed. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "I never asked for this. I only wanted to do my work with dignity." Her mind raced, caught in the storm of new emotions and expectations. "If there is a way through this, guide me." Her plea was a testament to her deep moral compass, a quiet desperation for clarity amidst the chaos. A week later, Vivienne Thorne, stripped of her usual pearls and looking remarkably weary, unexpectedly summoned Amara to her private chambers. By the flickering firelight, the matriarch's formidable facade showed a momentary, self-pitying crack. "Ethan sees something in you that I cannot change," Vivienne grudgingly admitted, her voice devoid of its usual imperiousness. "He believes you possess a quality that transcends station, a spirit I cannot break." She sighed, a sound heavy with a bitter acknowledgement of defeat. "And perhaps that is why he loves you." A mother knows her son's heart, even when it is misguided. Amara stood silently, observing the rare vulnerability in the woman who had sought to destroy her, a surprising confirmation of Ethan's unspoken feelings. Later that evening, as twilight softened the edges of the thorn garden, Ethan found Amara by the steps, the fragrant blooms a silent testament to beauty that defied rigid boundaries. He had heard his mother's reluctant acknowledgement, and it only fueled his resolve. Taking Amara's hands in his gaze unwavering despite the societal chasm between them, he spoke with courage and conviction. "My mother may never accept us fully," he declared, his voice a low, steady promise, "but I don't care. Amara, I love you, and I always will." Amara's heart swelled, a breath caught in her throat. Deeply moved, she finally allowed her own feelings to surface, her expression a silent, profound affirmation of the love she returned, a love as courageous as his own. The Thorne Mansion, once a bastion of rigid class and unforgiving pride, had been irrevocably changed. Its grand halls, the opulent sitting rooms, even the quiet servants' quarters, now hummed with a different truth. It was a truth of love, of courage, and of inherent dignity that could not be stolen. Dignity cannot be stolen, and true love cannot be silenced. This profound transformation, however, did not soothe Vivienne Thorne's unforgiving heart. Instead, it secretly fueled a resentment that festered, promising a new storm on the horizon. Though a crack had appeared in Vivienne Thorne's formidable facade, it was a momentary fissure, quickly sealed by the mortar of her unyielding pride. The public humiliation, the shift in her son's affections, the very notion that a maid had become the subject of citywide whispers, it all festered, transforming her initial shock into a cold, hard resolve for vengeance. In the luxurious, shadowed confines of her private study, Vivienne plotted. She saw Amara not just as an insult, but as a contagion, tainting the purity of her aristocratic world. Her thoughts, once consumed by social graces, now revolved around a singular, sinister goal: to destroy Amara completely, to erase her presence from their lives with a blow so cunning and final that no one would dare question Vivienne Thorne again. Unaware of the brewing storm, or perhaps subtly preparing for it, the bond between Ethan Thorne and Amara had grown stronger, a quiet fortress against the world's judgment. Their shared understanding deepened with every stolen glance, every hushed word, every moment of mutual respect that defied the rigid social structures of the mansion. Where Vivienne saw a maid, Ethan saw a woman of unparalleled dignity and grace. And where Amara had once seen only a master, she now saw a man of profound courage and unwavering heart. They drew strength from each other, their connection a quiet rebellion that, unbeknownst to them, fueled Vivienne's desire for revenge even further. One evening, under the solitary glow of a lamp in her private study, Vivienne Thorne executed the first chilling step of her malicious scheme. Her fingers, usually adorned with the finest jewels, carefully unclasped a valuable pearl bracelet from her wrist. It was a family heirloom, weighty with significance and worth. With a predatory gleam in her eyes, she did not place it back in its velvet box. Instead, she secreted it away, her mind already envisioning the dramatic scene to come. She would host a tea gathering, invite the most influential women of society, and then, with calculated precision, she would discover her bracelet missing. "They think you've changed him," she whispered to the silent room, a triumphant, cold smile gracing her lips. "Tomorrow, they'll see who really holds power here." Amara would be accused of theft, her reputation irrevocably shattered, her very presence in the Thorne household an unbearable stain. In the days leading up to the tea gathering, a subtle, unsettling unease permeated the Thorne Mansion. The air itself seemed to hum with unspoken expectation. Amara, ever diligent in her duties, felt the weight of unseen eyes, the whispers that followed her through the grand halls. She knew Vivienne's resentment had not abated. It had merely simmered, waiting for the right moment to boil over. Ethan, too, sensed his mother's renewed plotting, a cold determination that was more dangerous than outright fury. He sought Amara out in a quiet corridor, his gaze serious. "She's planning something, Amara. I can feel it. Be prepared." Amara met his gaze, her own eyes reflecting a newfound, quiet strength. "Then let her. I'm not running, Ethan." Her words were a soft, unyielding promise. The morning of the tea gathering dawned, deceptively serene. The afternoon room, bathed in soft, filtered light, was impeccably dressed for the occasion. Delicate china gleamed, polished silver reflected the light, and fragrant blooms filled the air. Vivienne Thorne, impeccably coiffed and adorned, radiated a chilling confidence, a predatory calm that belied the elegance of her surroundings. This was her stage, and she was the director of a play designed for Amara's destruction. Amara, moving through her preparations with her usual graceful efficiency, arranged the last of the flowers. Her hands were steady, her expression composed. Internally, a mantra repeated itself. "Do your work. Nothing more. Do not bow." A new fortitude had settled within her, a silent resolve that would be tested in the hours to come. Just before the first guests were due to arrive, Ethan Thorne found Amara in a hushed corner of the mansion hall. His gaze, usually warm, was now serious and unwavering, reflecting the gravity of the impending confrontation. He took her hands, his touch a silent anchor. "Whatever she tries today, Amara, don't bow your head. Promise me." His voice was low, earnest, a plea and a command intertwined. He wasn't just asking her to stand tall physically, he was asking her to protect her spirit, her inherent dignity, against his mother's venom. Amara met his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. "I promise, Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but firm with a new, steel-like resolve. It was a vow of defiance, a shared promise against the brewing storm. Soon the grand hall filled with the rustle of silk and the murmur of polite, yet curious, chatter. 12 prominent society women, their faces a mixture of social grace and thinly veiled intrigue, arrived for the tea. They exchanged knowing glances, their whispers sharp and inquisitive. "She's the one woman murmured, discreetly nodding towards Amara. "The maid from the dinner. How bold of Vivienne to keep her." Vivienne Thorne, playing the perfect hostess, greeted each guest with practiced charm, her eyes, however, subtly tracking Amara's every move. Amara, serving tea with her customary quiet grace, moved through the room, outwardly composed, inwardly prepared for Vivienne's inevitable strike. The air crackled with unspoken tension, the elegant setting a fragile veneer over the brewing malice. The moment arrived with a sickening jolt. Mid-conversation, Vivienne Thorne gasped dramatically, clutching at her wrist. "My bracelet!" she cried, her voice laced with feigned shock and accusation. "My pearl bracelet! It's gone!" Her eyes, sharp and venomous, immediately fixed on Amara, who stood frozen, a silver tray in her hands. Without hesitation, Vivienne pointed a trembling finger. "Search her! She's the only one who could have taken it. She was serving me just moments ago." A horrified murmur rippled through the guests. The elegant afternoon room transformed into a courtroom, Amara standing accused. But Amara, remembering Ethan's words, met Vivienne's gaze with unwavering dignity. Her head remained unbowed, her voice steady. "I have nothing of yours, ma'am. I am no thief." The accusation hung heavy in the air, a public spectacle designed to utterly destroy her. Just as the first guest stirred, uncertain how to proceed with Vivienne's demand, the doors to the afternoon room swung open. Ethan Thorne entered, his presence commanding, his eyes blazing with a righteous fury that silenced the room instantly. He strode directly to his mother's chair, ignoring her spluttered protests and cries of, "Ethan, what are you doing?" With a deliberate motion, he reached down, his hand sweeping beneath the delicate lace napkin resting beside Vivienne's teacup. In the sudden, deafening silence, he lifted his hand, revealing a glimmer of pearls. "It didn't go anywhere, Mother," he stated, his voice ringing with authority. "It was hidden right here, beneath your napkin, by the very woman who just accused Amara of theft." A collective gasp of horrified realization swept through the gathered guests, their eyes now fixed, not on Amara, but on the pale, trembling face of Vivienne Thorne. The elegant room erupted, not in the polite chatter of a tea gathering, but in a storm of outrage. Beatrice Finch, her face contorted with disgust, rose from her seat. "Vivienne, have you lost all sense?" she demanded, her voice sharp with condemnation. "To accuse an innocent girl, to stoop to such vile trickery. This is beyond the pale." Mrs. Whitmore and Mrs. Bennet, pillars of society and once Vivienne's closest confidants, echoed her sentiments, their faces etched with shock and moral indignation. "I will not be associated with cruelty this vile," Beatrice declared, her gaze firm. "Consider our acquaintance over." One by one, the other guests, their faces a mixture of horror and judgment, began to turn away, their whispers now directed at Vivienne. Her social standing, once an unassailable fortress, was crumbling around her, leaving her isolated and utterly exposed. Ethan, his face grim but resolute, placed the incriminating pearl bracelet squarely on the pristine white tablecloth between them, a stark symbol of his mother's deceit. His voice, though calm, resonated with a finality that brooked no argument. "This ends today, Mother." He looked at her, not with hatred, but with a profound disappointment that cut deeper than any anger. "You've disgraced yourself. Not me. Not Amara. You." He paused, allowing his words to sink into the stunned silence of the room. "You humiliated yourself beyond repair." His gaze then softened as he turned to Amara, who stood tall and serene beside him, her head still unbowed. The battle was over, the verdict delivered, and in that moment, moral integrity had unequivocally triumphed over malicious pride. With Ethan's words echoing in the suddenly quiet room, Amara and he turned hand in hand and exited, leaving Vivienne Thorne alone in the wreckage of her scheme. Beatrice Finch, pausing at the door, offered Ethan a small, approving nod, a silent acknowledgement of his courage. "Your father would be proud, Ethan," she said softly, before departing. One by one, the remaining guests followed suit, their hurried goodbyes barely audible. The grand afternoon room, once bustling with life and cruel intent, slowly emptied, becoming a desolate space. Vivienne, her face pale and drawn, was left utterly alone amidst the overturned teacups and scattered crumbs, her social world shattered around her. Word of the Thorne tea scandal spread like wildfire through the city's elite circles, not as a whisper, but as a roaring condemnation. Invitations to Vivienne Thorne's once-coveted gatherings stopped immediately. Her so-called friends, the very women who had eagerly attended her malicious tea, distanced themselves completely, Eager to avoid the stench of scandal, the Thorne name, once synonymous with elegance and power, now carried a distinct whisper of shame and deceit. Vivienne's reputation was irrevocably ruined, reducing her, the proud matriarch, to a social pariah in the very society she had so desperately sought to control. As evening settled over the Thorne Mansion, a peaceful quiet descended upon the sprawling garden. Amara and Ethan stood together, hand in hand, bathed in the soft golden light of the setting sun. "She's finished," Amara murmured, the words not triumphant but simply a statement of truth. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "She did it to herself. Pride always falls hardest." He turned to her, his eyes full of love and promise. "Now, our future begins, and I will always protect your dignity, Amara, and our love." Amara looked up at him, a serene smile gracing her lips. The garden, fragrant and beautiful, became a symbol of their blossoming relationship, a new beginning forged in courage and the triumph of the human spirit. In the vast, empty grand dining room, Vivienne Thorne sat alone. The chandeliers hung dark, the polished table reflected only her solitary figure. Her power was gone, her reputation shattered. The echo of her own malice now the only sound in the cavernous space. Then, faint but clear, she heard it. The distant, joyful laughter of Amara and Ethan from the garden. It was a sound that pierced the silence of her defeat, a cruel melody of the love and happiness she had tried so desperately to destroy. And for the first time, Vivienne Thorne truly knew what it meant to lose. Not just a title, but everything she had built on a foundation of cruelty and pride, leaving her with nothing but the bitter ashes of her own making.